Barlow.
Present.
Boner.
Here.
Brennan.
Here.
Case.
Present.
Cooper. Crago.
Here.
Crum.
Here.
Dockstetter.
Here.
Driscoll.
Here.
French.
Here.
Guru.
Here.
Hicks.
Here.
Hutchings.
Here.
Ide.
Here.
Jones. Cole.
Present.
Landon.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
McEwen.
Here.
Nethercott. Olson.
Here.
Pappas.
Here.
Pearson.
Excused.
Excused. Rothfuss.
Here.
Salazar.
Here.
Schuler. Scott.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Steinmetz. President Biteman.
Here.
30 present, 1 excused.
Thank you. Our chaplain of the day is Brother Jerry Zellers from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here in Cheyenne. Brother Zellers, will you lead us in the prayer?
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are so grateful to be here this morning, and we ask a blessing on all those who are participating here today on behalf of all of us. We love Thee, Father, and we're grateful for all the ways that Thou hast entered our lives and how Thou loves us in all ways. We're grateful for the atonement of Jesus Christ. Father, we pray a blessing upon this body today, that they will keep in mind their oath and bring forward the ideas and represent those of us today who participated in the great privilege we have to vote in the United States of America. We're grateful for all of the families of all those present and their support. We understand the hardships that all these here today incur throughout the year, and we ask a blessing on them for safety and for critical thinking and for adherence to their inner principles and love. Again, Father, we thank Thee for being here today and the good health that we enjoy in the country we live in, and we say this in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Senator Driscoll, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reading, correction, approval of journal. Will the reading clerk please read the journal committee report?
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 28, 2025 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Crum, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. Are there any objections? There being none, the report is adopted. No doctor of the day. Today in Wyoming history, in 1868, Diamondville, Wyoming was built to house miners. The town was named for the superior grade coal that came from the local mines. The coal resembled black diamonds. Diamondville is located in good old Lincoln County. Quote for the day, our greatest glory is not in never failing, but in rising every time we fall, Confucius. And I had to use my line item veto on the dad joke of the day, so I'm going to read one out of my book here. I used to play piano by ear, now I use my hands. There it is. Set that right there. Announcements, today is the last day for second reading in the House. Additional funds are due for snacks and beverages available in the Senate break room. Please submit your payment to Heather in the LSO office or Kelly in the leadership office. And reminder, if you traveled home over the weekend, please remember to go sign the mileage book in the LSO office. Okay. Are our visitors here yet? Dick? No? Okay. Well, we're waiting on them. Let's do some signing of enrolled acts. Yes. There's only one, so enjoy it. Senate Enrolled Act number 63.
Senate Enrolled Act number 63, being original Senate File 74, an act relating to controlled substances.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 63, being original Senate File 74. I have so signed. Joint Conference Committee reports. Oh, Senator Larson, now would be a good time for a
Thank you.
announcement or a privilege.
Mr. President, can I have the privilege of the floor?
Please.
Thank you. I have some good folks from throughout the state, especially from the northern part of the state, up down here to encourage the shooting complex. And if they could rise and wave when I say their name, and we'll hold applause, please. Leanne Ryder, Mayor of Cody. Jennifer Toma, Director of the Cody Chamber of Commerce. Aaron Davidson, CEO and owner of Gunworks in Cody. Danny Michael, Curator of the Cody Firearms Museum at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. Scott Stewart, former Park County Sheriff and current Park County Commissioner. And then from Sheridan, we have Luke Thorkelson, CFO of Weatherby. And then from locally right here in Cheyenne, we have William Lucero, Director of Sales at Stag Arms and Aero Precision Ballistic Advantage, and Tori Roodhouse, Marketing Manager of Stag Arms. Please welcome them to the.
Welcome to the Senate. All right, we have message number 354 regarding Senate File 43, a Joint Conference Committee report. Randy, could you read that in, please?
Joint Conference Committee Report number 1, on House Message 354, referencing Senate File 43, Temporary Water Use Agreements Amendments. Signed, Representatives Banks, Davis, and Strzok, Senators French, Ide, and Steinmetz.
Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the Joint Conference Committee Report number 1 to Senate File 43 and ask you to vote aye. Remember, a week ago or whenever it was, we didn't like the concurrence. So we met with the other side last week. Very good, very good meeting. They wanted to keep the First Amendment, and that was after years after the expiration of temporary water transfer of any irrigation water rights, the water right shall be used for its adjudicated or permitted purpose for a period of time equal to not less than 50% of the period of which the temporary transfer, including any extension, was exercised before becoming eligible for any further temporary use transfer. They really wanted that, really didn't do anything to the bill, didn't harm the bill, so we agreed to that. We did not like their Second Amendment, after purposes insert except for the beneficial use of in-stream flows identified in Wyoming Statute 41.3.1001, and we asked to get rid of that. So they agreed to delete that, which was good. So I think we're good, and I would ask you to vote aye.
Discussion on the conference committee report. Seeing none. The motion is that the Senate do adopt the Joint Conference Committee number 1 report referencing Senate File 43 and vote aye. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Joint Conference Committee number 1 to Senate File 43. Roll call. Anderson? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? Aye. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson excused. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Conference Committee Report Number 1 to Senate File 43, 28 aye, 2 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have adopted the Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report referencing Senate File 43. Appointment of conference committees. Joint Conference Committee Number 1 to House Bill 246. Let me see if I can find the catch title on that bill. Wyoming Wednesday will be, conferees will be Senator Smith, Chairman, Senators Boner and Ide. Appointment of Joint Conference Committee Number 1 to House Bill 154, false voting amendments. Conferees will be Senators Pearson, Chairman, Senators Hicks and Steinmetz. Okay, Ellen, do you want to wait for second reading before our guests get here, or do you want to start second and interrupt? Okay. We can start second? Okay. I just didn't want to start second reading and then interrupt this, but, okay. Just so you know, we have some talented kids that are going to perform for us here in just a minute. They're down in the house, getting warmed up. What's that? We could. Ellen, why don't we stand at ease, because there are some amendments on these bills, so why don't we stand at ease to the sound of the gavel and wait for our guests to arrive. Senate will come back to order. This morning, we have a special performance by the Rock Springs High School Polyphony Chorus. The group will sing 4 pieces. They are directed by Soren Engstrom. We are also pleased to have Principal Ben Straka with them today. Fellow senators, please help me welcome these talented students to the Senate. Welcome to the Senate. All right, let her rip.
No more talk of darkness, forget these wide-eyed fears. I'm here, nothing can harm you. My words will warm and calm you. Let me be your freedom. Let daylight dry your tears. I'm here with you, beside you, to guard you and to guide you. Say you love me every waking moment. Turn my head with talk of summertime. Say you lead me with you now and always. Promise me that all you say is true. That's all I ask of you. Let me be your shelter. Let me be your light, your safe. No one will find you. Your fears are far behind you. All I want is freedom, a world with no more noise, and you always beside me to hold me and to hide me. Say you'll share with me one love, one lifetime. Say the word and I will follow you. Share each day with me, each night, each morning. Anywhere you go, let me go too. Love me, love me, love me. That's all I ask of you.
All I Ask of You is an original song from the hit musical The Phantom of the Opera, with music by Andrew Lloyd Webber. The show opened at Her Majesty's Theatre in London, England on the 9th of October in 1986, before beginning a 35-year, 14,000 performance run on Broadway, the longest in history. Phantom of the Opera follows the story of Christine, a dancer at a Paris opera who dreams of being a famous singer. The Phantom tutors Christine through her musical journey, but quickly becomes unhealthily obsessed with her. As the musical goes on, the Phantom's fixation intensifies. He manipulates the opera, sabotages Christine's rivals, and threatens the life of Raoul, her newfound love.
Bogorodice Dievo was written in 1990 by Arvo Pärt. Pärt was born in Estonia in 1935 and is still alive today with 25 musical awards and as the most performed living composer from 2011 to 2018. The text of the song is from the Orthodox Book of Prayers in Church Slavonic, mirroring the Latin prayer Ave Maria with some slight textual changes, praising the Virgin Mary. The song is only around a minute long, representing a shout of joy.
Bogorodice, Dziewo, radujся, Bogorodice, Dziewo, radujся, благодатная Мария, Господь с тобою, благодатная Мария, Господь с тобою, благословенна ты женами, благословен плод чрева твоего. Яко спаса родила еси душ наших, яко спаса родила еси душ наших. Богородице, Дево, радуйся, благодатная Мария, Господь с тобою, благословенна ты чредаки, благословен плод чрева твоего. Яко спаса родила еси душ наших.
Locus Iste was written in 1869 by the Romantic-era composer Anton Bruckner to celebrate the dedication of the votive chapel of the cathedral at Linz, where Bruckner had been a cathedral organist for some time. One of the several motets he composed, Locus Iste, features an ABA format, in which the melody from the beginning is repeated at the end. The B section features layered melodies, a compositional technique known as polyphony. We like this song because of the overtones that all the different parts create.
Our final piece will be Going to Boston, a folk song from New England arranged by Alice Parker. Alice was a graduate of Smith College in Northampton and studied music theory with Ray Mason at the New England Conservatory in Boston, where she took the idea of this song. She once said that the notes on the page of music aren't the music. The music is created only when people perform it. We could not agree more. We enjoyed learning and singing this song because its fast rhythm and upbeat sound. We invite you to enjoy it as well.
Locus Iste, Adeo factus est. Locus Iste, Adeo factus est. Irreprehensibilis est, irreprehensibilis est,
Goodbye, gals, I'm going to Boston. Goodbye, gals, I'm going to Boston. Goodbye, gals, I'm going to Boston. Early in the morning. Don't we look pretty in the ballroom? Don't we look pretty in the ballroom? Don't we look pretty in the ballroom? Early in the morning.
Stand up, gals, and let's go with them. Stand up, gals, and let's go with them. Stand up, gals, and let's go with them. Early in the morning. Walk to the party in the ballroom. Walk to the party in the ballroom. Walk to the party in the ballroom. Early in the morning. Tick, 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 tick. Right and left will make it better. Right and left will make it better. Right and left will make it better. In the morning,
Won't we look pretty in the
right and
ball?
left will make it better. Right and left will make it better. Better in the ballroom in the morning. Swing your partner all the way to Boston. Swing your partner all the way to Boston. Swing your partner all the way to Boston. Early in the morning. Swing your partner all the way to Boston. Swing your partner all the way to Boston. Swing your partner all the way to Boston. Early in the morning. Walk to the pretty in the ballroom. Walk to the pretty in the ballroom. Walk to the pretty in the ballroom. Early in the morning. Early in the swing your partner all the way to Boston. In the morning. Swing early in the morning.
Goodbye, gals, I'm going to Boston.
Walk to the pretty in the ballroom.
Goodbye, gals, I'm going to Boston.
Walk to the pretty in the ballroom.
Goodbye, gals, I'm going to Boston.
Walk to the pretty in the ballroom. Pretty in the ballroom in the morning.
Goodbye, gals. Goodbye, gals. Goodbye, gals. It's early in the morning.
Tick, 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 goodbye.
Wow, thank you so much. Senator Kolb and Senator Jones, you should be very proud of these fine young tigers. They can sing. And Director Soren, this is for you. If you come by and grab this on your way out, thank you so much for coming down and singing for us. We love it. The acoustics in this room are amazing, and it just never fails to give you goosebumps when you guys are singing so good. So thank you for that. Safe travels back to Rock Springs, and please come back again. We'd love to have you back. Thank you. Senator Cole.
Privilege of the floor, Mr. President.
Go Tigers!
Thank you. Okay, signing of enrolled acts. House Enrolled Act number 57. Oops, better give it to you before I sign it.
House Enrolled Act Number 57, being original House Bill 156, an act relating to elections.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act number 57, being original House Bill 156. I'm so signed. House Enrolled Act number 58.
House Enrolled Act Number 58, being original House Bill 192, an act relating to public utilities.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act number 58, being original House Bill 192. So signed. Bills on second reading. House Bill 32, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 32 engrossed. What is a Woman Act?
Looks like there is an amendment. Would the reading clerk please read it in?
House Bill 32, second reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 5, line 1, after.
Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I move this amendment to House Bill 32. Mr. President, this is almost a technical correction, not quite. If you look in the data collection section on page 4 and 5 in the bill, it requires if the state agency or local agency is doing these data collections, that they follow the definitions that are in this bill, what's male, what's female. What this does is simply, as a literal construction of what's here, is it always requires those two sexes to be identified. Sometimes, Mr. President, with simple data collection, you don't need that. And what the amendment does is allows where you're not seeking to have the data segregated by sex, you can collect it that way. It's often cheaper. For example, Mr. President, if you were wanting to know how many dentists, for example, were in practice in various places in the state, you may not care whether the dentist is male or female. You just need to know is there a dentist there. We had an example a number of years ago, Mr. President, when we did the welfare reform. We asked to have an examination of the employers' unemployment tax returns to see if the people that had been on the AFDC welfare program had gone to work, and the answer came back, yes, they had. We were never interested in whether the individuals were male or female. We just wanted a simple count. 60% of them had that, told us what we needed to know. So, Mr. Chairman, this amendment simply says that that distinction is made only when identification by sex is used.
Okay. Discussion on the amendment? Discussion? Seeing none, we're voting on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 32. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. The amendment has been adopted. House Bill 32, second reading amendment number 2.
House Bill 32, second reading amendment number 2 to engross copy, page 3, line 18, delete.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 32 and ask for your favorable recommendation. Senators, we're just amending the language found on page 3, line 16 through 20 to state as follows. So a person born with a medically diagnosed condition of a disorder or difference in sex development shall not be denied any legal protections afforded by law. That's what the amendment does. This concern was just brought to me by the state's leading employment lawyers, just concerns about referencing federal law and shall be required to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and that's a whole nother can of worms. So I think the amendment still achieves the intent without maybe making things more complicated for Wyoming's employers and employees. So with that, I'm happy to stand for questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Discussion on the amendment. Discussion? Seeing none, we're voting on second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 32. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Discussion on the bill. Seeing none. House Bill 32, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 43, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 43 engrossed, age verification for websites with harmful material.
House Bill 43, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Excuse me. House Bill 121, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 121 engrossed, hospital pricing transparency.
There is an amendment. Would the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
House Bill 121, second reading amendment number 1 to engross copy, page 20, line 7 through 22, delete.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment just restores the good work of the standing committee. And a few members mentioned that they wouldn't vote for the bill with the onerous fine of $1,000 a day. So kind of went midway to 500 and hope that you would vote aye on the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oops, I'm sorry. I moved. Second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 121. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator, or Mr. Vice President, will you take the chair, please?
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I would request to divide the amendment. Division 1 being lines 1 through 7. And Division 2, the remainder of the amendment.
Without objection.
Okay? I'll take Division 1 first, ladies and gentlemen. I'll support a compromise here on Division number 1, which would clean up the fine language and make it just an even $500. I think that's reasonable, and I could take that compromise. The rest of the amendment takes out a lot of other things that I think are needed to maybe nudge people back into compliance, because, ladies and gentlemen, this only comes into play when a hospital's in material non-compliance. As if you read your bill, this only comes, they have 30 days to rectify the situation with no penalties whatsoever. The penalties and fines and the everything else that comes into play after the fact is after they're in material non-compliance. So I think there needs to be an enforcement mechanism in there somehow, and there needs to be some sort of a carrot and a stick. And I think this accomplishes that, and I think this would be a good middle ground for us. So aye on Division number 1 and no on Division number 2 is what I would recommend. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Discussion? Any discussion? Senator Scott.
Mr. Vice President, and we're on Division 2, right? Mr. Vice President, this is
Senator Scott, just a minute. I think we're on Division 1.
Division 1?
Yes.
Okay, Division 1's fine.
Say, Mr. President.
Okay, so Division 1 is lines 1 through 7, and that deals with the dollar amount. It lowers it to $500, but it tightens up the whole paragraph, paragraph B. Division 2 is the remainder of the amendment, lines 8 through 33. Thank you.
Any other discussion? So we're voting on second reading amendment number 1, Division 1 to House Bill 121. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Carried. Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. On and against Division 2, like I mentioned in my previous remarks, we're going into the part where if a hospital is in material non-compliance, meaning they've passed their 30-day grace period and now they're in big trouble, and that nobody is seeming to want to rectify the situation, what the bill contemplates without this amendment is if you're sent to collections because while your hospital's in non-compliance, they won't allow that. So it would protect the consumer from being sent to collections while the hospital is in non-compliance with this act. If you vote aye on Division 2, you're taking that out of the bill, and you're also putting in the language that basically excludes every hospital in the state of Wyoming from this act. So going back to my comments from Friday, I think this division seriously weakens the bill, and I would urge a no vote on this division. Thank you.
Discussion. Any discussion? Senator Scott.
Mr. Vice President, on and for Division 2. Mr. Vice President, the bill as came to us from the House had some very onerous provisions in here. You get out of compliance with this price transparency, you can't collect your bills, and you have to refund. And the standing committee looked at those, and they were way too onerous for a bill like this. This is a very difficult area, figuring what the prices are. There's multiple prices depending on who's paying. It's a very complicated area. It's very complex. And this, Mr. Vice President, is an early step in a long path down getting the actual price transparency. You put a provision in here that says not only you can't collect the bills that were incurred while you were out of compliance, but you have to refund. Mr. Vice President, you could very well bankrupt some hospitals in the state. That is a much more onerous provision than is appropriate at this stage of the art in price transparency in hospitals. So, Mr. Vice President, yes, we want fiercer compliance. The standing committee probably went too far in cutting the penalties down to just $100 a day. This is the part of the amendment we passed compromises that up. So we've got enough to have the hospitals pay serious attention. But bankrupting them is not a good idea, Mr. Vice President. I think that's a very real risk if we should pass the bill as it stands, if we pass this amendment. So if we don't pass this amendment. So on and for the amendment, it'll get us a system we can live with and that will lead to progress in the future.
Other discussion? Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So, Mr. Vice President, there was some comments made by the divider of the amendment regarding the 30 days. Mr. Vice President, the way I understand the bill, the 30 days only applies if the agency responsible for oversight finds a material violation. But, Mr. President, if you go down into down further in the bill on page 25, if a patient is the word on line 5, page 25, provides documentation that a facility is out of compliance, there is no 30 days. It's just you're in violation, and then this process starts, and that's where the non-collection comes in. And it may not be just non-collection for that individual. It may be non-collection for anybody that's received services while they're in non-compliance. So there are some vagaries in this that I think need to be further examined. I understand the proponents of the bill want to have this process, but if you damage the system we have, the process won't matter much because you won't have health care in your community. So, Mr. Chairman, I would be on and for this amendment. This division happens to be divisible again, like actually a couple more times. I'm not going to do that, but I would be for this division. And then if on third reading, if we want to refine it some more, we can do that. But right now, the 30 days only applies if the agency is involved, not if someone in the community or the public or a patient, by the language in the bill, the pure language in the bill, says that there's an allegation of material non-compliance. So there is no opportunity to get in accordance with this bill, to come into compliance in that effect. So all of a sudden, if that's where you are, and then you may not be able to collect your bills, and to the good senator, my good colleague's point, you may actually have to pay those folks for services you provided them. It doesn't make sense, Mr. Vice President. On and for this division. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Other discussion? Mr. President.
Mr. Vice President, I would just say the only point I would like to make is, we're not going to be bankrupting these hospitals. They would be bankrupting themselves by not being in compliance. So it's their choice to follow this act or not. We hope they would follow this act, and if they don't, there has to be some sort of enforcement mechanism to make them want to do it. So on and against Division 2. Thank you.
We are on second reading amendment number 1, Division 2 to House Bill 121. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Chairs in doubt. All those in favor, please stand. All those opposed, please stand. The amendment has, the Division 2 has passed. House Bill 121, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Heard no objection, it is so ordered. Okay. House Bill 144, I'm sorry, House Bill 133, second reading of the Senate, of the House Bill.
House Bill 133 engrossed, sanctuary cities, counties, and state prohibition.
House Bill 133, having been read 2 separate times, question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. House Bill 144, second reading of the bill.
House Bill 144 engrossed, County Canvassing Board.
House Bill 144, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 164, second reading of the bill.
House Bill 164 engrossed, medical prescriptions off-label purchases.
There is an amendment.
House Bill 164, second reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 4, lines 1 through 3, delete.
Senator Brennan.
Thanks, Mr. President. Without objection, I request that second reading amendment 1 to House Bill 164 be withdrawn.
Without objection. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is second reading on this bill, and I have a query for the proponents of this bill. 2 queries. 1, does it interfere with Wyoming statute right to try? The way this bill is drafted, it talks about approved drugs, and right to try in Wyoming, statute that was passed some years ago, talks about trial medications and trial things. So what I want to know, there's no notwithstanding language in this bill. So for those that are interested, please examine whether this is actually going to negate something we put in the law in Wyoming that gives patients the opportunity and their providers the opportunity to try some of these drugs that are in trial phase. They've not been approved, but they're in various trial phases of that. The second thing is, Mr. President, sorry, we've had a switching of the helm up there. Welcome back. Mr. President, is that I am also a prescriber as a veterinarian, and I haven't had one veterinarian reach out to me and say, boy, we should really be included in this. We should really be included in this. That's because it's already part of what we can do. We call it practicing medicine. And we are subject to federal oversight, Department of DEA oversight, Drug Enforcement Agency, et cetera. I don't need another layer of government saying what I can and can't do, especially when I anticipate this is actually limiting in its scope of approved FDA. That says I cannot use or potentially use something that is experimental, even if it has temporary authorization in food animal, let's say. Very significant issue. So I just have those 2 questions for the proponents of this bill. 1, does this interfere with right to try, already in state law? And 2, there are other prescribers, and at least veterinarians, that I think are left out of this bill. And you had any feedback from them who want to be included in this bill? again, they could be easily included. This does not have to be a human medicine bill only. The bill itself is entitled 33, which is all licensures, including veterinarians. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Barlow. Any discussion? Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to try to do my best. I think on pages 4 and 5, it mentions that notwithstanding any other law, a prescriber or pharmacist, well, nope, that's not the one. Because this is something that the medical profession already does, we're trying to codify it into law so they can, by law, do what they are already doing. So that would include the veterinarian, their ability to continue to do what they're already doing. And yeah, you may not have had a veterinarian, a pharmacist, or optometrist, or whoever call in and write about this bill. Not everybody knows what's going on down here at the legislature, but I don't think it in any way interferes with the law that he was referring to. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hutchings. Senator Scott, did you wish to rise to speak?
Mr. President, I don't know about the right to try. I think it doesn't interfere with it, but I don't know that. Mr. President, on the prescribing, it was confined to the prescribers of human medicine, and part of the reason is there have been, on occasion, some difficulties in the pharmacy area. The pharmacist saying, should we really be filling these prescriptions to the things that are off-label when it's something that is very commonly done, Mr. President? So I think that's why the bill's written the way it is. I think the authors didn't see a need to include the veterinarians explicitly because there doesn't seem to be any problem there.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Further discussion? Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to discuss a little bit this bill. This can already be done. People can already use medications off-label. I do have some concerns and hesitation with this bill, that we might be a little too prescriptive with this bill in that, and that this might actually harm that ability a little bit more than help that ability. So if somebody has some thoughts on that, that would be great.
Discussion? Senator Hutchings for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, this bill is about freedom, and I want to remind the body, we had our former president and our current president that are here today, I believe, because of off-label prescribed drugs. This is a very, very good bill. Let's let it pass, and as usual, if something happens in the future, we can come back and fix up this bill or this law. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Further discussion? Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. President. So in reference to my fellow senator over here, so I think absolutely that veterinarians could use this. There are veterinarians that use pharmacies that I'm aware of, at least in my area. Sometimes a veterinarian will call in a prescription for a dog or cat or whatever. And then on the other questions, maybe we can talk to the bill sponsor and get it fixed up for the third reading. So thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none. House Bill 164 having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 165, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 165, ranked choice voting prohibition.
House Bill 165 having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 259, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 259, Supplemental K-12 School Facilities Appropriations 2.
There's an amendment. Would the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
House Bill 259, second reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, delete.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 259 and ask for your favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, this is last time I asked you to vote no. This time I'll ask you to vote aye, because this is removing the standing committee amendment. Standing committee amendment, to remind the body on this bill, is to take out the design and the construction funds from Campbell County High School. You might imagine that I spent quite a bit of my weekend hearing from folks in my community and getting advice and feedback and hearing frustration. And it was a beautiful weekend. I could have been probably out doing some other things. But that's what we do. We represent our communities. So, Mr. President, I think I get 2 5-minute shots at this. So I will try to be succinct in responding to some of the things that were said on the first hearing, and then bringing the community perspective too, that I received this weekend. First of all, from the chairman of the board of our Board of Trustees, I think the message was twofold. One, we have followed the process, and the process has gotten messy. There's been 3 different directors in the timeline, in the time frame, 18 to now. 3 different directors of that agency that's responsible for doing this work, the base work, and then providing recommendations to the select committee that this body uses. In that time, and of course there was also a pandemic in there, so things fall off the rails, things get messed up, etc. But our system has followed, our school district has followed the process and completed everything they've been asked to do so, including funding one of their own Mercer reports. So now there are 3 Mercer reports from 2018 till now, 3 Mercer reports. And if anybody wants to see them and see their conclusions, I happen to have them right here. And the last one right here, page 29, recommendation, is what came to this body from the other side and was recommended by our select school facilities and our JEC when it came to this body, to this legislature at the beginning of the session. But Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President, one of the things that we've done in this body is we've tried to respond to some of the, the second thing, I'm sorry, Mr. President, that our chairman wanted me to make sure is we have no interest in stepping in front of someone else. There are other communities and other schools that need to be addressed as well. We have no interest in stepping. We did 2 of them last year, if you'll recall. They may not have completed the entire process, may not have still, but that is not the point. If they need schools, they should be addressed. Campbell County believes also, and the evidence shows that we also do, and we would like that opportunity as well. But Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, last week we amended a bill to take care of the ECA, to get that to full funding, which is one of the places that the court thought that we should probably address, not because of this legislative session, but more broadly. Well, the court also says, Mr. President, if I could, in their conclusions, we do not have a system that adequately or evenly assesses school facilities for educational suitability. Campbell County High School has been determined not to be suitable, and have allowed, this is also out of the court, by allowing unequal and inadequate school facilities to exist for far too long a period. Campbell County High School, again, Mr. President, since 2015, Mercer's 18 and 20, now again in 24. The amendment that's on the bill, the accepted standing committee amendment, sets it off at least another year. Mr. President, if I could, there was a lot of discussion about we'll come back and do it later. Since 2010, Mr. President, there's been 67 schools in the state of Wyoming in 29 school districts out of the 48, 29 school districts out of the 48, which were funded in one go. A couple of them had to come back for some, CPI or inflation type stuff, but they were all funded. And then there were some that were phased. They were intentionally phased for construction purposes or else. But there were four that I'll point out to you. One is out of Albany County, an elementary school. 6 years from the planning money until the construction money. 6 years. Another one out of this community, this very community. 2 years, multiple studies, that was over 6 years, but 2 years between the planning money, the design money and the construction money. 2 other schools, and like I said, I'm glad to share the list. There are these are in your communities. Rock Springs Satellite, it was 5 years. 5 years that they waited between the planning, design, and construction. And then again, another school, Munger Mountain, which is in Teton County, 5 years. So there is evidence that sometimes things do fall through the cracks. Maybe it's intentional, maybe it's for other reasons, but to say we're going to come back, I think we should caution ourselves on that. We have the opportunity now to provide the full funding. And Mr. Chairman, we're probably very close. I'll save the rest for the second 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Barlow. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. It was interesting quoting from the Supreme Court decisions. Everybody but a couple people in this building recognizes, including the courts, that our school facilities funding model is broken. Epically broken. And we come back year after year trying to do our best to fund schools, and we do. There was a period of time in recent years where that didn't happen. And that was very bad for us and for schools. But there is no argument being placed on this floor or in this effort where Campbell County High School does not get funded. We funded it last year, we are continuing to fund it this year, but we are recognizing that the process is broken in that we are asked to pre-appropriate hundreds of millions of dollars before we actually know the price. That is not fiscally responsible. So this year, I mean, can somebody from the community tell me that they are ready to break ground this year? Because the answer to that is no. They are not ready to break ground this year. Why? Because we are still needing to appropriate planning money this year to continue the planning process. When the planning process is complete, we will have a dollar amount for what that school costs. And so we can do that with accurate information, with current information that's closer to the time to understand inflation. It is always the argument for every single maintenance and construction project that if we wait, it will cost more. Well, then we should just fund all the high schools in Wyoming right now, just bankrupt ourselves to nothing and just pay for them all, because it's going to be cheaper if we do it today than trying to do it responsibly with accurate information at the time. By voting against this amendment does not mean you do not support Campbell County High School. It just means that you support continuing down the process of funding it as you did last year and as we have asked you to do this year, with continued appropriations for planning money and their facilities, and their transportation facilities, which is being done. Campbell County School District is getting over $20 million this year in this budget. I urge your no vote.
Senator Garreau.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against, and just to remind everyone once again, what your Appropriations Committee did was appropriate $4.38 million for additional costs related to the design, for a total of $11,985,000 for design, which right now, as we know, is the total design ask for the school. Also appropriated $14,473,000 for the Campbell County School District Transportation Facility, which is along with the high school project. And we also appropriated $2.9 million in contingency funds. So I think it's fair to say that the Appropriations Committee is doing its best to follow the recommendations. We want, as we all do, to take care of Campbell County High School like we do all our schools. And we feel that this appropriation will do it. Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Mr. President, sorry.
Thank you. Let's go over to Senator Pappas next.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and for this amendment. You know, I agree with my good colleague from Laramie County. The way we do things is broken. And one of the things that are broken is we decouple planning and construction money. I've argued that many times in the Select Committee for School Facilities. I mean, I've been put on that committee twice and I keep getting kicked off of it. I think the reason being is that we really don't understand it, and I think that's why we're seeing all these court cases against us. But design money and construction money should never be decoupled. Planning is okay. Planning money can be separate from both of those. But to separate it, the two, we've seen time and time again, and the good senator from Campbell County referred to a few projects that happened, and there are many more, actually. And if you recall, I told you the project that I was personally involved with, what it cost us because we decouple planning money and construction, or not planning money, design money and construction money. We know we're going to build this building. And to the argument that we don't know the exact dollar doesn't hold water with me, okay? Because that dollar amount can always be changed. Can always be changed. We can modify that number in a heartbeat when we come down here. What we can't do, and we seem to always struggle with, is actually approving the money to begin with. And I just don't believe you when you tell me that we're going to come back here next year and let this project go forward. I just can't believe that. I've seen it too many times that we don't follow through on our promises. I urge you. We know we're going to build the building. Let's just get it done. Do not decouple planning or design money and construction money. Not a good policy. And we need to put that policy into effect if we're going to ever fix our situation with school construction in this state. Thank you.
Senator Salazar, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. So your Senate Appropriations Committee just didn't do this willy-nilly. We just didn't take 5 seconds and then decide to do this. We looked at our fiscal situation this year. We believed this was the correct course of action. The majority leader is exactly right. This system is broken. So we're going to just keep on going with a broken system. I ask the floor to sustain the Senate Appropriations Committee recommendation. Vote no. And by the way, this delete is close to $147 million you're going to be voting on. I ask you to sustain your Senate Appropriations Committee.
Senator Jones.
Mr. President, I just have a few questions. We have a very lengthy list of schools that need to be replaced or some major maintenance done to them. And we really need to be looking at funding the school every single year. We are so far behind, we will never catch up. And these schools aren't getting any better, they're getting worse. So if we don't fund or earmark funds every single year, we are never gonna get there. We have to do whatever we need to do to make sure our kids are going to safe, appropriate schools. And there's testimony that some of these schools just really aren't safe anymore. So we have to start planning ahead.
Thank you, Senator Jones. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. On for the amendment. So I mentioned this before, but I'll reiterate it. The part where our process breaks is when it reaches this body. Up until this point, the school facilities process works pretty well, candidly. And again, I'm not saying it's perfect, Mr. President. I'm saying it works pretty well. We identify what schools need to be replaced. We identify what schools need to be refurbished or redesigned. We identify what components in specific schools need to be fixed. We identify how much major maintenance is needed. All of that is brought to the legislature. Schedules for completing and replacing those schools that rise on the list. Schedules for new buildings that need to be built to accommodate increases in population. All of that comes from the Select School Facilities Committee. Those recommendations are brought to this legislature through the Joint Appropriations Committee, and we end up with a 190-page court case against the state for failing to actually achieve what needs to be done for the state. Mr. President, I would posit that if we had followed the Joint or the School Facilities Committee recommendations, we would not have any component of this Supreme Court case, well, it's going to the Supreme Court, it's not a Supreme Court case yet, but I assume it will, of this court case before us related to school facilities. Because the recommendations that have come from the School Facilities Committee have been to try and achieve a constitutional system. And this is another case in point where the recommendation of the School Facilities Committee is to fund this now, to keep the design with the building costs, and to move it forward as quickly as possible, recognizing that we have other things that we need to move on to. This is just one of many concerns that have been brought from that Select School Facilities Committee. So the idea that we're here right now saying, well, we've got all of these other plans, we can do it later, there is a schedule that needs to take place to optimize the efficiency of the process, to get the job done. And there is a recognition, Mr. President, that we will be back next year asking for other buildings. We're not done yet. This doesn't end the process. Now, it is true that we have a few high schools at the same time, and that's wildly inconvenient. The recommendation of the School Facilities Committee, actually, if you'll recall, was to provide the design and building funding last year for this school. That was what came out of school facilities. It wasn't for this year. It was last year that select committee recommended that we release the entire design and building costs for the high school. Rationally, though, that was delayed for one of the two schools. We had two priority schools. We picked one horse that year with the intent that we would come back this year and pick the other horse. But here we are, Mr. President. So I'd ask everyone to remember back to last year when we were going to come back this year and fund this high school. A perfect circumstance, a perfect example of how we don't necessarily come back and do what we said we were going to do last time, because the only reason it isn't already funded is we were going to do it this year. On and through.
Senator Nethercott, for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't recall making any promise like that. I appreciate the missing memories associated with Campbell County High School. I think had we followed the recommendation of school facilities to fully fund both high schools prior to planning being finished, prior to design being finished, years prior to them being shovel-ready to build, to the tune of probably $330 million, $350 million, what would the state have lost in interest earnings in order to continue to pay for all of the additional schools on the list as recommended to always be fully funded by school facilities? It's broken. We know that the schools manipulate the system in order to move up on the list. We know that all of the schools have, I don't know how many mini Mercer studies done. And then, oh, there's another maintenance failure. And all of a sudden, a school moves up on the list in crisis fashion. We are getting gamed. We are getting gamed all of the time. Unfortunately, school facilities has not understood a way to maybe get our arms around this, whether or not it's intentional, negligent, or whatever it is. But the amount of funding associated with this is not sustainable. And so a cautious approach, looking at it step by step, is what we're asking to do. It's what I support in order to get our arms around this prior to recalibration and prior to understanding how school facilities can be retooled to prevent the gaming.
Senator Landon, for your first time.
Mr. President, thank you. As you know, I have served on the Select Committee for School Facilities for about 12 years now, along with our senator from Albany County. It's kind of hard to sit here today and hear that the system is broken and everything that we do on the Select Committee is broken because of it. I don't believe that. And Mr. President, I appreciated the opportunity the last 2 years for you to serve with us on that committee. The chairman of our Revenue Committee served on the Select School Facilities Committee. And so I have always trusted the work we do to bring you the best recommendation we can. That's our job, and we bring it here. The other job that I have is to work very hard for this Senate and for the leadership of this Senate. Today, it makes it tough because my job is to represent the job that you sent me to do, and we did it. And I would challenge any one of you senators to come and sit in on one of these select school facilities meetings. I think you would learn a great deal. And I think you might get a little better understanding of the list that we bring to you. It's pretty well vetted, and it's damn good work. But today, my job also is to represent the leadership. So it's quite the quandary, isn't it? Probably for all of us. We have to decide. But Mr. President, if that system is broken and it mirrors the system that we use for select water, we don't do this to select water, that's for darn sure. But everybody's an expert on schools, so we do it on schools. This is tough because it costs a lot of money, and it's tough every single year. We have this debate every single year, and that's good and healthy. But folks, we've got over 25 million square feet of school space out there that we need to take care of. And just be aware of that, and be aware of the fact that we have a system that is coveted and copied by other states because of the way we do things. Is it perfect? No. The senator from Albany County is exactly right. But we work every single interim to try to make it better. So your choice today is, can we put this off and still live up to the commitment that we've made to Campbell County? Or do we fund it? And good luck with your decision, Mr. President. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Landon. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wasn't really planning on speaking here, but I think there's some interesting correlations we just heard between this process and the select water process. To be clear, about 4 or 5 years ago, I said in a public meeting that our select water process is broken. Obviously, we just had a catastrophic failure in Goshen County. We had a near miss in my neck of the woods. Meanwhile, we're very proud of our little process that we had with those projects. Obviously, we had missed something. I mean, you don't have to sit through a bunch of meetings to understand that. Common sense would dictate that that wasn't up to snuff, and we did make some changes. We did do an assessment of curriculum and aging irrigation infrastructure. We were looking to, and we should, I would say, now that we have that study back, look at ways to change the process. And so I look at the same thing with this process, Mr. President. I've read somewhere that the average school building throughout this country is 49 years old, the average. That seems to be the maximum in this state. Why is that, Mr. President? Why is it that a school building only seems to last 50 to 55 years before they have some sort of catastrophic failure that requires hundreds of millions of dollars to fix? That just doesn't pass the common sense test. The system is clearly broken. And perhaps we can look at the way other states do things to see how we can get a little bit more life out of these schools. So I believe it is prudent. I believe the majority leader hit the nail on the head. Let's tap the brakes, recognizing that this system is in desperate need of reform. And let's see the best way that we can go about doing that. There's been some good faith efforts that haven't quite got across the finish line. Let's see what else we can do. I think it's about time we really dig into this effort because the price tag is massive, Mr. President. and it's not going away anytime soon.
Let's go to Senator Grove for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank all the folks on school facilities. They do, I think they do a good job. I really do. And to the point of what's broken and what's not broken and why it's broken, I think we'll talk that one around quite a few times, Mr. President, as we go forward in this and many others. I want to just clear up a couple things, though, and remind folks that in 259, or is it 295? Did I take dyslexia yet again? No, 259, in this bill, we funded $29,832,000 on component maintenance throughout the state in facilities based on the recommendations of the School Facilities Commission. All the money that we put into Campbell County School was at the direction of the School Facilities Commission, except for the construction portion. Well, Mr. President, I can tell you as the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee at this point, every story I've heard since I've been on appropriations is we need this money, we need it now, it is desperately needed. I can prove it 6 ways to Sunday on why you have to fund it now. Every time, every project, every request, without a doubt. With the courage and the conviction of people that are very, very intelligent, learned people in their subject matter. They know what they're talking about, whether it's water, whether it's schools, whether it's funding our university, or the myriad of things that we have, and we have to choose. You ask us, Mr. President, to choose and to make recommendations to this body. That's all we're doing. No one on appropriations, I don't speak for them often, but I can on this one. No one on appropriations is against Campbell County High School. I can say that with a great deal of self-assurance. Just like all the members of school facilities are, just like we all are. Right now, there's $146 million plus in account to build 2 other high schools. It's sitting there, it's waiting for them to be finished based on recommendations that have been made by this body. It's there, and we'll be there as well. And so I just wanted to say, you know, I've heard a lot of arguments around about this, that really this is not, we all are for Campbell County High School. We are all for getting this project done and getting it done in a cost-effective measure. On and against. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I want to speak, the parallel with the Water Select Committee has been made. And Mr. President, they're really very different circumstances. There's much more objective criteria in the water area. You know, how many acre feet are we going to save? What's it worth? What's it worth in the future? And there is typically a new project there. There's a local share that comes out of the pocket of the beneficiaries. And we're explicitly prohibited from doing that in this area. So the select education facilities, not the fault of the people that are on it, it's the system is different, Mr. President. And another thing that's different is some pretty good academic work that suggests that at least within the range that we're talking about, it doesn't make any difference in the student performance, what the facilities are. It's nice to have the nice facilities, but what really counts is what goes on in the facilities. And that's one of the reasons the system we've got now is broken, because it is starting to eat in to the money we're going to have available for operations, Mr. President. And I do reject the notion that every time we turn around, we have to spend more money to be constitutional. No. We're the ones that have to make the judgment as to what's too much and what isn't in general in every sphere, including education. Because we're taking people's money from them in taxes involuntarily. And that's tolerable only because the people have delegated to this body and the one down the hall because they can replace us if we get it wrong. And that's how that judgment has to be made, Mr. President. So I think we need to stand here and support our Appropriations Committee, Mr. President, on and against the amendment.
Salazar for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make a couple of points clear. First of all, to the School Facilities Committee, thank you. You do incredible work with what you have to deal with, incredible work. So secondly, I want to make it very clear that my view of being against this amendment is because of the fiscal impact, particularly in this supplemental budget year, where we're doing a lot, as you well know. And then finally, let me say this. The good senator said that we need to be building more schools. I agree, but we need to do it in a different way. I will say, in my opinion, this is not sustainable. This is not sustainable. We've put millions and millions of dollars into this particular project. In my opinion, it's going to go forward. This amendment needs to be voted down at this particular time. I told you the price tag. I ask that you stand behind the Senate Appropriations Committee. We deliberated, believe me, we deliberated on this. And I ask for your sustainment of our decision. Thank you.
Back to the sponsor for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, I'll start with the last comments first. That deliberation, I don't think, included reaching out to legislators who represent that community and asking our thoughts, giving us a heads up so we could actually kind of understand what was coming. So that doesn't, well. The second thing, Mr. President, said, I actually have the goldenrod here. The goldenrod, as of today, 3/3/25, 1.7 billion, in the LSRA. And if I turn over to the school foundation program, cash on hand, 26, $181 million. So I don't know what information the appropriations had when they made that determination about not having the money, but the numbers today would say the money is available. First. The second thing, I'm going to take some exception to potentially the thought that my school district is manipulating something, manipulating a process, manipulating whatever it is. I don't believe that. And if there's evidence to that, I would appreciate it being actually presented, not some grandiose, we're getting schemed. Again, my community has gone through, my school district has gone through this, elected officials have gone through this process, 3 Mercers in the last 6 years. We funded 2 schools, and folks spoke, one of the folks from that community spoke on that school, Teton County. They don't have a Mercer yet, and we funded it last year. Last year. So you can see why there's a little bit of disassociative here going on. Mr. President, broken system. Maybe it is a broken system, but right now, Campbell County has a broken school. A broken school. And students who go to school in that school, and teachers who actually try to teach in that school. Now, we may have a broken system, but that's on us. That's not on them. That's not on our community. That's on this legislature. Some of you have been serving here long enough. Been knowing long enough. Why didn't we fix it? So now we're going to start fixing it when not your school or your school or your school gets there, but when a school from my community gets there. Which I'll remind you again, the goldenrod says, actually the funds are available. Mr. President, epically broken. Yep, epically, where's the bill? Where's the bill? We've got recalibration. Where's the actual bill that deals with the facilities? Didn't see it this year, if we're epically broken. Finally, Mr. President, you know, what are they going to do with this money? They're meeting with they're picking their planning folks today and tomorrow. They're interviewing those folks. The intention, I have the timeline here. This has been approved by that Board of Trustees, elected officials in my community, hoping that the Wyoming legislature will take care of their responsibility and fund. There will be RFPs out by the end of this current year. They will be selecting contractors in the best time of year to select contractors, which is the middle of the winter when contractors are looking for the next construction season's work. They will be doing things. Project will be going. If they wait until March, right now, next year, when we are doing our budget session, you think those contractors are going to be that interested in waiting around to see what happens here, what the Wyoming legislature does? I bet some of them have actually been down this road before. So, Mr. President, I would ask this body respectfully, we have the means, the financial means. We have money set aside last year for 2 schools that aren't moving any faster. In fact, I would respectfully say this one can probably move ahead of them. Not because they want to take their money, because they can actually logistically get to it and get the work done. So, Mr. President, I would ask my colleagues to consider, if the system is broken, let's fix the system. But you don't fix the system on the back of a broken school that exists right now. You don't delay what exists right now. Ask you to vote aye on the amendment and then ultimately aye on the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, we are voting on second reading amendment number 1, House Bill 259. It contains about $176 million appropriation. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 259. Anderson? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Boner? No. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? No. Driscoll? Aye. French? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kolb? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Olson? No. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Smith? No. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. On the amendment, 15 aye, 16 no.
Second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 259 has failed. Back on the bill. Senator Barlow.
Mr. President, last committee of the whole, I asked when the timeline was for all those components, all those major maintenance items, and I haven't received that information. So by third reading, I'd sure appreciate what the timeline is for all those 17 projects that are in your communities, and when those monies would actually be spent. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator, for reminding us. I'm writing it down as we speak. Further discussion on the bill. House Bill 259 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 280, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 280, sex offender registration.
House Bill 280 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Madam Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we stand recessed until 2 p.m.
Recess till 2 p.m. Any announcements? Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Labor Health Committee will be meeting with our colleagues down the hall at 12:30, room 110 or 13, I'm sorry, I think it's 113, to do interim topics. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, your favorite committee, Senate Minerals, Business and Economic Development, will meet today, 1 p.m. in Capitol Extension Room W4. At 1 p.m., we'll do an interview with one of the ERC governor appointees, Bill Miller. At 1:30 p.m., we'll do an interview with a second interviewee, Peter Gottfried. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 5, Agriculture, will meet tomorrow morning, Tuesday, March 4th, in the Capitol Extension Auditorium and online. This is a joint ag meeting. We'll host the annual Forest Health Briefing with the National Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 1, Judiciary, will meet with our friends from down the hall at 12:15 in room W006 to discuss interim topics.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Education Committee number 4 will be meeting on Wednesday at noon in room E05 to talk about joint education topics for the interim. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Joint Appropriations Committee will be meeting at 12 noon in room 301 on the 3rd floor on interim topics.
Thank you. Any further announcements? Seeing none, you've all heard the Majority Floor Leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Senate will stand in recess till 2 p.m.